Pop quiz time. So in the link in the description, we're going to be using that a lot. There's a quiz. Please take the time to fill it out. 5 are for points. The last question is an opinion. Pause now. Okay, let's see how we did. So we're going to use the next slide to go over that. Okay, so this slideshow, you can pause it. It's also going to be in the description. Please feel free to just look at these numbers, but let's go over the answers. Number 1 was all of the above. In the various ways of quantifying the dropout rate, the numbers are staggering, right? So yeah, it's a little scary. Number 2, ineffective teachers and school environment are not a major reason. So they're still important factors, but they're not one of the major reasons that students drop out. In terms of warning signs, misbehavior and vision problems, those are not warning signs. If a student misbehaves, they're going to be there. They might, yeah, you're going to have them. Number 4 was true. On average, a college graduate will make $1 million more over a lifetime than a high school graduate. Number 5, 2,000 high schools across the U.S. graduate less than 60% of their students. And number 6, that was an opinion. So we'll share these opinions with you. We'll put it in the description after everyone does this video. And we'll also make sure to share it with everyone through Blackboard. So we all kind of have an idea. We all have our opinions as to how we can prevent students from dropping out.
So why do students drop out? That's the major question here. For some of you, this might take some perspective, but take a moment to think. What are some major reasons you think that students might drop out? If you want, pause this video. We're going to go ahead and speak about that right away. So, there was a study done by Business Insider where they questioned students who had dropped out and compiled a list of some major reasons as to why that might be. More than 27% of them leave school because they are failing too many classes. 26% report boredom as a contributing cause, and 26% also dropped out due to becoming caregivers, and 20% say that school simply wasn't relevant to their lives. There are other common reasons that you can look at right here. You feel free to pause video and look more into that. And then some more that are going to be here. So there's some pretty surprising things that dropped out to me, especially being a caregiver. Having to take that role into your family and really taking care of one another is a big thing. And it's something that wasn't relevant to me, but or that I couldn't relate to, but it is a pretty big reason. So again, here's just a visual of how that list would look out in terms of percentages on a graph. Feel free to keep this up. We're going to see if by the end of our presentation we can knock out all of these reasons.
And as teachers, I think it's important when we look at these throughout our educational careers, whether it's from like kinder through college, this may have never applied to you, like ever in your life. So it's kind of important for us to have a perspective and to be able to understand where our students are coming from. Because even though it doesn't apply to you, it might apply to a friend, and it will apply to your students.
So what are prevention programs? Due to the variety of reasons students drop out, school completion interventions must include multiple components with efforts to increase student engagement at the core. So what this just means is that, as we saw, there's many different reasons why these students are dropping out, and a lot of the times they're not stacking onto each other. Now, some of these students can have multiple of these issues, but that's not always the case. We have to make sure that we are focusing specifically on certain issues when trying to help these students. One of these is the early warning system. What this is being proactive about looking at our students and looking at their grades and looking at their patterns of behavior, attendance, and seeing, are they on track to graduate? Because if they are not, then we have to be helping them out before it gets to a point that it's too late. So what they do is data systems should provide real-time data so that individual students' performance can be continuously monitored to allow interventions to be adjusted as needed.
Okay, so here's some ways that prevention programs also work. Mentoring. So this seems very straightforward. Students need someone, whether it's a teacher, whether it's a coach, whether it's a community member. If they have someone, they're more likely to succeed. This works for all types of students. Even having an informal relationship with a caring adult, that helps students with disabilities. Talking about our behavioral theory, mentors should be positive role models that help students acquire the skills. You know, coaches, band directors, teachers, you have to be that person. Family engagement. So families have to be engaged, but it's not just parent to student. It has to be parent to student to teacher, home and classroom. Uh, Schools have to create a welcoming atmosphere. So the school does, and you do. You have to convey that family participation is wanted and valued. Don't just call home for bad things. Call home for positive things. Make sure to get to know your parents. Uh, if you need to. So the teacher that I interviewed talked that she actually went to go visit a student at home. He wasn't participating. They weren't answering at home, so he scheduled a home visit, and that's what she's going. If that's what it takes, that's what it's going to take. Academic interventions, you might be aware of these. So students, main important thing is your grade and your credits. If you're behind in credits and your work's not being turned in, there are ways such as Apex, online dual enrollment, tutoring to help bring that grade up, to help get that work in. And schools usually have that. The transition to high school, this connects to earlier interpersonal skills. If you're a multiple subject person, this goes with you. High school is more depersonalized. Students might not know everyone. Students might not feel engaged, might not feel motivated. Make sure at your school, especially ninth grade, to do an orientation, to have students visit the school. If your school doesn't have a strong community, make sure that strong community is in your classroom.
Yeah. And so a question that students often ask is, how is this information relevant? Am I ever going to use this in real life? Um, and students with this mindset, it's important that we do still give them an education that prepares them for the future and that they feel is relevant to them so that they can stay engaged. One way of doing this is career and vocational preparation. These are effective ways to engage students as students learn real world applications of their academic classes and have opportunities for field based learning. This can be worked with local businesses for opportunities such as on the job training, interview preparation, and even permanent employment. Interpersonal skills is another intervention. As we know in multiple intelligence theory, interpersonal skills are important to be able to communicate effectively with people. Students who lack the opportunity for this have a high likelihood of being suspended or expelled for disruptive behavior. And lastly, class and school reconstruction. Sometimes students just need a change in their classroom, rather physically or whether that be smaller class sizes, a block schedule, or students with fewer or more teachers.
So, how can teachers help? So, school related factors such as relationships are highly important. As we said earlier and will be stated again, a lack of meaningful relationships has caused problems. If students don't have an adult in their lives, they're not going to succeed. So, here's some ways that students can be that adult in their lives. You create a positive environment. We talked about this in many of our classes. Make sure that your classroom just looks good, it's welcoming. Get to know your students and let them know you. If you can be vulnerable, they can be vulnerable around you, they'll open up. You can be vulnerable around them. If you see any of the warning signs that were discussed above, do something about it. Encourage them and make sure that they know that education is important. Show them examples of people like them, people from their community who have also succeeded.
So, an evidence-based study that cements this how teachers and students relationship is important is a study that is done out of Norway. You can go ahead and click in the description. They have the source there if you want to read it. I'm just going to give a brief overview. While it was in Norway, it's still relevant to the U.S. How they did this is students completed two 4-page questionnaires during two school classes. This was done at 3 points during the school year, and again, what importantly was done in ninth grade, months before their 10th grade classes were determined. Again, the importance of having it in ninth grade is that it is the most failed grade of all. The findings of this was that did conclude that teacher-student relationships served as a significant mediator in the path from mental health difficulties via school grades in high school. Furthermore, the results indicate that the everyday teacher-student relationship may be a significant contributor in the risk mechanisms by which students with mental health difficulties and lower grades end up with higher dropout rates later in secondary school.
So I interviewed a ninth grade English teacher at Pomona High School. So we are both alums from of that high school. So she told me that teaching is about relationships. You have to understand that you're not just teaching content. What you teach are building blocks to life. Teaching is about communication. You have to know your students, but you have to be comfortable in sharing information about yourself. You must be understanding. Students may be going through a hard time at home. You still have to hold them accountable. If you gave them a deadline and you extended that deadline, they have to meet it. This struck out to me. Paying attention to special populations, low income students, students of color, that's not going above and beyond. If anything, that's the minimum as an educator. And finally, remember that you're working with humans. Everyone has needs, everyone's going through a lot. Remember that everyone has needs and attempt to provide those needs as best as you can. Multiple subject, have more time. Single subject, you have 50 minutes to do a lot.
So we talked about how the teacher can help and how different programs can help students, but this still might not be enough. We need the community to help as well. A study out of the United States looked at how out of school time programs and art based community programs benefited high school students with multiple risk factors. The benefits included long term skill development that engages youth behaviorally, emotionally, and academically, and an emphasis on critical ingredients of real world application through performance, as well as many other positive contributors. Now, along with that study, there are still more programs that can be implemented, such as funding towards a community center, which can help a city and the community a ton. Different sports, family events, extracurriculars that might not be given at the school due to funding, or just because it isn't offered. So the involvement of extracurriculars is pretty big. As we read in Grit, one of the things that stood out with me the most was how the involvement in extracurriculars, especially when given a leadership position, can predict how successful a student is in the future. Involvement in extracurriculars also get students involved in something so they aren't bored, which was again a factor of why students were dropping out. A study of Northeastern University explored this idea and concluded involvement in extracurricular activities seemed to minimize the risky behaviors, and those risks include joining a gang and getting into trouble these students that can lead to the students dropping out. So we did have to keep this brief due to time, but if you want to explore this topic more, you can go back and read through our presentation as well as all the resources we have in the description below.
Yeah, dropping out of school is a huge epidemic in the US. Preventing students from dropping out requires proactive measures to help students as early as possible. Although many programs have been put in place, uh, this requires a lot of effort from everyone: parents, teachers, faculty, and the community. That's how our students succeed. We talked about grit, and in this case, it takes grit from the students, it takes place from the teachers, the community. So I think this quote applies a lot to grit. Energy and persistence conquer all things. And here are the references. Feel free to look at them. Thank you.
Thank you.